When I was 14, I joined a Discord server that was mostly filled with girls and a few guys, many of whom identified as LGBTQ+. It was a friendly space, and I felt comfortable there. That's where I met someone who would later turn out to be a predator. At the time, he was looking for an artist to create a commission for him, which he offered to pay for with Robux, a currency used in Roblox. Since I was in need of some extra money and enjoyed drawing, I volunteered. We started talking privately, and after I completed the commission, he paid me as promised. Over the next few months, we kept in touch, and I began to consider him a good friend. Looking back now, I realized that he was grooming me. After a period of not talking, I reached out to him again, asking if he needed another art commission. This time, he asked for a photo of me. I sent one, and he responded by calling me beautiful and stunning. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but he eventually manipulated me into sending inappropriate photos of myself in exchange for Robux. That night, I cried myself to sleep. I was already in a vulnerable place emotionally, having recently lost someone close to me, and his actions took a heavy toll on my mental health. He continued to pressure me for more photos and videos, and I felt trapped. It got to the point where I felt so overwhelmed that I didn't want to live anymore. I tried to stop and even warned others about him on Discord, but he found out and threatened to expose the photos and videos on his YouTube channel, which had around 70,000 subscribers. I was terrified and felt like I had no way out. After about a month, things seemed to calm down, but the damage had been done. My mom eventually went through my phone and discovered the messages. I was ashamed and scared, and I told her how much I was struggling. A few months later, I was admitted to a mental hospital because I was at risk of harming myself. While it was a difficult experience, it helped me get the support I needed. I started medication and therapy, and I've been slowly working toward healing. Since then, I've blocked him and everyone connected to him on all my social media accounts. I'm doing much better now, but the experience had a profound impact on my mental health. I've learned a lot from this, and I'm focusing on rebuilding my sense of safety and self-worth. There's this hotel by the Bulgarian seaside where we have an apartment. To be honest, that's kind of a strong word for it because it's really just a big room with a giant bed, a refrigerator, big windows on both of the walls, and a really small bathroom. It's on the ground floor, and both of the walls face the parking lot of the hotel. Despite all that, it's perfect for me alone. It's right next to the beach, and that's why I've been spending some of my summer vacations there. Around July, about 3 years ago, I was spending a week there with my ex-boyfriend, and then about 3 to 4 weeks alone after that. My ex always said that the owners of the hotel were a bunch of creeps. Whenever we went out of the room, we had to walk a path passing through the reception, where they used to sit all day doing absolutely nothing. The old dad, I believe, was around 60 years old, and his son was around 40. His daughter was around 45, and her husband was there as well. Whenever you would pass, they would all get silent and just stare at you. Every frickin' time. I was used to it already, but my boyfriend was irritated, especially when he caught the son staring at my butt and smiling. After that, he used to just stare him down very deadly right in the eye whenever he got the chance. So, my ex goes back to the city, and now, it's the 3rd week that I've been alone. The night is really hot, so I decide to open up both of my windows wide open and put the curtains above them. I did this to defend myself from being eaten alive by mosquitoes. After all, I'm on the ground level, and my bed is right below both of the windows. I wake up in the middle of the night because I just feel like someone's watching me. This continues to happen the next few nights. I'm very easily scared and paranoid, but I was alone there, so I've been telling myself to chill and that it's just my crazy mind trying to scare itself. Some nights went by without a problem. Meanwhile, the creepy son tried to talk with me 2 to 3 times when I was at the beach. So it's around 1 a.m., and I'm falling asleep when I hear footsteps outside the path. It's not really strange. There are some people next to me staying at the same kind of apartment. Maybe someone's coming home or going out partying. But the steps stop at one point. Really close. Outside. I hear all of it because of the open windows. I'm sitting on the bed now and listening. When I notice the freaking door handle is moving slowly up and down, I kinda lost my crap but stayed quiet. And I was really proud of myself for locking the door. After that, nothing really happened and whoever the person was just walked away. I closed the windows, called my dad, and told him what had just happened. He told me to lock and close everything and that he would take me in the morning. Mind you, it's a 5-hour drive. This was 3 years ago. Last night, we're all having dinner, and my dad is like, Do you remember your sea adventures? He then proceeds to tell me that he made his own little investigation back in the day. He asked the owners of the hotel for security camera records. They checked the ones at the parking lot, and a tall figure was seen walking around. The part with the door handle wasn't in the camera's range, though. My dad then remembers my strange midnight waking up routine and tells them to check the older records, in which they all see a man getting to my window and peeking through the curtains, standing like that for about 15 to 20 minutes. The woman finally recognized the man as her brother and then told my dad that he has mental disabilities. She begged him not to press any charges and promised they will take better care of him and look after him. So, the good guy that my dad was decided not to press any charges, but even to this day, it still gives me the creeps. When I was about 12 years old, I lived with my mom and brother in a hotel room. We were trying to get back on our feet after leaving my abusive father. The place was the only hotel in our small town that would allow us to live there on a long-term basis. It was a really creepy building from the early 20th century, with insanely unsanitary showers and walls covered with old wallpaper made of thick fabric. Everything was beige with flowery patterns and covered with mold. Our room actually had a rotary phone hooked to the wall next to the master bed, which had the most terrible, loudest ringtone. Think regular rotary phone from hell, multiplied by the fact that the hotel was always silent, humid, and echoey. We hadn't received many calls on this phone as we were hiding our whereabouts, telling reception to say there weren't guests under our name, etc. Once, though, they had patched through social services, who were probably the only people to call. The reception checked with us first, though, to see if it was okay. We were pretty scared at the time and extremely on edge. My best friend actually hung out with me a few times, which made me feel a little better. We had a crush on the cute 30-something daytime receptionist, which, in hindsight, he really wasn't that cute. Just an older man with hair. But teenagers are all over the place. Thankfully, he was ignoring us and didn't understand he was the object of our giggling. One afternoon, I was reading in the room, all on my own. My mom had found a job and was due to be back in a couple of hours, and my brother was at after-school care. I had been there for a couple of hours, undisturbed, when the phone rang. Once I recovered from the cardiac arrest it caused, I picked up. The caller began, "Yeah, so you're an attendant of the Friday dance class at the sports center, right? We're doing a study, and I'd really like to ask you a couple of questions." I wasn't planning to go back to that dance class, but a wave of irrational anxiety hit me. For a moment, I even wondered if this was some bizarre, elaborate scheme by my father to find out where we lived. Despite my unease, I decided to play along and simply replied, "Yes." The caller continued, Okay. So, when you dance afterwards, do you change? Change clothes afterwards? And you're all sweaty, right? You do get sweaty, right? I answered cautiously, I don't change. There aren't showers in the sports center, so I just go home. There was a long, uncomfortable silence on the other end before the caller finally said, "Yes, I shower. So, what kind of things do you wear? White panties?" I hung up and crawled away from the phone frantically because I didn't want it to ring directly into my ear and kill me in case he called again. Then, I took my coat and went to hang out at the department store until it was almost time for my mom to get home. It was as if the phone was this thing to get away from, and then I just forgot all about it. I guess I had too many problems to deal with at the time, so perhaps it didn't really seem particularly alarming, but it still gave me the absolute creeps. Years later, the memory came back to me when I heard a very similar ringtone from hell. For some reason, one thing struck me immediately that I hadn't really zeroed in on when it happened. The call had come through immediately, without me speaking to reception first, or hearing the click of them transferring the call. We stayed a few months after that, and we used the phone a bit more. Plus, at that point, no one knew we lived there except for social services, as my mom confirmed. Since then, I also asked specifically if the sports center did. They didn't. In other words, the caller was sitting at the reception desk. Now, I don't really remember who was sitting at the desk when I ran out a bit later. What I do remember, however, is staying in that hotel for a few months and not seeing the cute receptionist again. Yet, as per the warning, this is a very mild story. So, I've really been wondering quite a lot about what else he was doing that would have come to light if I had figured it out and complained. I guess I'll never really know, though. And again, I know this story is pretty mild compared to what most of you have read about, but still, it really gives me the creeps whenever I think about it. This happened early this week, and it still freaks me out. I work at a hotel in my hometown. I was driving my husband's truck into work as he was taking mine to the shop to get serviced. It's a very large truck, and I only drive it when I absolutely have to. When I pulled into the side parking lot, I noticed the entire lot was covered in snow, and no one could see the lines for the spots. So I began looking like an idiot and tried to park in what I hoped was a spot, backing up and moving forward several times. When I finally parked, I got out of the truck and grabbed my backpack. That's when I heard someone yelling from the sidewalk behind the parking lot. A guy shouted, "Hey, you need to learn how to freaking park." I felt a flush of embarrassment but tried to ignore it. I closed the truck, locked it, and started walking toward the front of the building. The hotel has a side entrance for employees, but it requires a code, and my memory is terrible, so I decided to go through the main entrance instead. As I walked, I heard the guy yelling again, "Do you hear me, idiot?" My heart started racing. I glanced over my shoulder and saw him following me. I picked up my pace and called back, "Please leave me alone. I need to get to work." But before I could reach the corner of the building and make it to the entrance, the guy grabbed my arm and spun me around. I'll never forget what he looked like for as long as I live. He was wearing dark clothes and a torn-up winter coat. His eyes were bloodshot, and he reeked of cigarettes and whiskey. He must have been drunk, but his words were clear and sharp, without a slur. He growled, "You're coming with me," and started dragging me back toward the truck. I tried to pull my arm free, yelling, "Let go of me!" But his grip only tightened. He snapped, "Give me the keys. We're taking a drive." Panic surged through me, and I began screaming, "Someone help! Police!" But no one was around. I'm a 26-year-old woman, not skinny, but much smaller than this guy. He dragged me effortlessly, and the snow on the ground made it impossible to get any traction. My feet slid as I struggled to break free. I kept yelling for help, praying that someone, anyone, might hear me. But it was the slow season, and the rooms on that side of the building were likely empty. The guy turned back to glare at me, his voice cold and menacing. "Shut the hell up and give me the keys now." I was carrying my backpack on one shoulder, as it was big and bulky from my uniform and shoes. I quickly slipped the strap down my arm, grabbed it, and swung it right into his face. The guy let go of me, and I just ran for my life to the front doors. I heard the guy screaming, but I ignored him. I was way too scared to look back at him. I ran inside and all the way to the employee locker rooms. When I finally calmed down enough, I went to the front desk to talk to security. Sadly, there were no cameras on that side of the building, so nothing was recorded. They called the cops, and I made a report. The cops informed the general manager of the hotel that they needed to seriously consider security cameras on that side of the building, as drunks and drug users were known to be in this area. They got the description of the guy and said they would keep an eye out for him. The manager apologized like crazy about the incident, but I told him it wasn't his fault. He's a really good guy. I did ask the security guard to follow me out so I could check on the truck. Thankfully, it was fine. The security guard promised to make more rounds outside, especially that early in the morning. Creepy kidnapper. Let's not meet again. This primarily happened to my mom, but it has badly affected me as well. She wanted me to post this, just to give people a heads up that you can encounter creeps literally anywhere, so always watch your back. This happened last month, and we still don't actually know what happened with Jeremy in the end. I'm a 19-year-old female who was studying at a university in England, entering my second year. Last month, we decided to stay in my university town the day before I was due to move into my student home so I could get there early, move my stuff in, and have the rest of the day to relax, before Freshers Week started. The night before moving day, me and my mother stayed in a hotel located in my university town. We were greeted by a very friendly man called Jeremy. Jeremy was very attentive and showed us to our room, staying around 10 minutes to tell us the history of the hotel. He repeatedly asked us if we needed help with packing and stuff, which we kindly rejected. It was a Friday, so me and my mother went around the town and had a few drinks before going out. Jeremy explained that he never works on weekends, so he told us to have a good night and wished me luck with the rest of my university journey. He gave me a hug and gave my mother a hug and a slight kiss while moving his hand toward her bum, which she found weird but brushed off as nothing. My mom is 37 years old but looks young for her age, and Jeremy is easily in his 40s, so we just kind of thought Jeremy may have fancied his chances with her. Moving on, me and my mom had a great night around the town, watched a couple of live bands and had a few glasses of wine, so we were a little tipsy. We got back to the hotel, and the bar was still open, so we decided to have a nightcap. While we were having a drink in the bar, Jeremy emerged from a back room, spotted us, and made a couple of jokes. Jeremy then proceeded to watch a video on his phone on full volume of a woman screaming at the top of her lungs as if she was being murdered. The screaming was absolutely blood-curdling, and it completely unsettled me and my mom. There was also another couple in the bar who looked a little concerned as well. The video went on for another 3 to 4 minutes before Jeremy laughed and went into the back. When we made our way to bed, my mom had taken her shoes off after they had become painful from dancing in the bars earlier. Jeremy emerged from the back room, put his arm around my mom, and said, "Oh, let me help you to your room, honey. You must be wasted after all of that drinking." Now, my mom wasn't actually that drunk, and insisted that she was fine, but Jeremy just persisted and basically followed us to our room. He then proceeded to come in, but I bid him good night, and pretty much closed the door right in his face before locking it. The next morning, we were up early and made our way down for breakfast. The girl working took our breakfast order, only for Jeremy to bring them out, insisting the eggs were cooked to perfection, although he claimed he never worked on weekends. Me and my mom were thoroughly weirded out by Jeremy at this stage, and we checked out straight after breakfast. Jeremy saw us out and then said these exact words: "I'll be seeing you very soon, Christy." Christy was my mother's name. At the time, it didn't really strike us as unusual, and my mom just drove us to my new home and helped me unpack. She left in the early afternoon because she had to work that evening at our local bar. The rest of the day went by without much of anything really going on, but that night, I'm out drinking with my housemates, and I get a call from my mom saying that Jeremy had just come into the bar where she works. This is no coincidence. When we were having our nightcap, Jeremy would have heard us talking about the bar where my mom works. He also had our address, which needed to be provided at the hotel for whatever reason. He had also said to my mom, when she was pouring his pint, that she should go around to his friend's house after her shift, which was just around the corner. This call really scared the crap out of me. About half an hour later, my mom called me and said that Jeremy had left the bar after she rejected his offer to go to his friend's house later, but Jeremy had said to her that he'd be back for her later. This was really concerning, and I told her to make sure that there was a customer with her as she was locking up on her own that evening. After this call, I felt absolutely sick, and I didn't join my friends in going to the nightclubs. In the meantime, I decided to call my dad, who no longer speaks to my mom. They aren't on bad terms. They just choose not to keep in contact with each other after they split a few years ago. My dad is a club bouncer, but he wasn't on duty that night. I decided to call him and absolutely begged him to drive down there and make sure everything was okay with my mom. My dad could clearly tell by my shaky voice that I was panicked, scared, and absolutely helpless. Around 1 a.m., I didn't really get a response from either my mom or my dad's phone. I was worried sick and hoped that Jeremy hadn't been waiting around a corner and done something to my mom when she was locking up. At 1:30 a.m., my mom finally rang me in hysterics. She'd been walking up when Jeremy pulled up in a car with 3 other men and shouted at her to get into the car for a ride. My mom declined his advances, and he got out of the car and approached her, telling her that he wouldn't tell her again. He said that she had been flirting with him and teasing him ever since she checked in last night. She told Jeremy that was complete bullcrap and that she wasn't into him. As Jeremy got closer to her, she could smell heavy liquor. When Jeremy went in to grab my mom, my dad pulled up behind the car and beeped his horn. This caused Jeremy to go back into the car and climb back in. He then told my mom that he knew where she lived and that he'd be waiting. The car screeched off, and my dad got out of his car and told my mom that I had told him to go check on her. Scared to go home, she asked my dad to drop her off at my grandmother's, as she really didn't want to be alone that night. After that night, we never saw Jeremy again. My mom did make a report to the police about him and gave them a full account of what had happened, but she never heard back from them. I'm just so relieved that my dad turned up at the pub when he did, as Jeremy could have easily been able to get my mom into that car. She's only very small in stature, about 5'2" and 120 pounds. I just really hope that scumbag got what was coming to him and is behind bars now. My mom was pretty badly affected by this, and only now is she comfortable being alone in her house. So, Jeremy, wherever the hell you are, please stay away from us, and definitely stay away from my mom.